Just a quick trigger warning, there are mentions of death, murder, guns, and or other mentions of killing materials. Also kidnapping. So please, if you are sensitive to any of these topics, I would suggest you come away from this video now. If you're still watching, hope you enjoy, and let's get on with the story. Quirks Swallowed in Shadow, an MHA AU fanfiction, written by Arya Shadeslevier. Chapter 2, The Main Three. Mizuko wakes up on the ground. She blinks her eyes several times to let her eyes adjust and attempts to sit up. Around her, the room is almost completely white and covered in machinery. What happened? Where in the world am I? She thought, starting to panic. She frantically tried to stand up but fell flat on her face. She turned to see that her arms were chained to the wall, and started to panic more. She then remembered she had watched her own mother and brother be murdered by her father, and then passed out. She stopped, calmed herself, and stared straight at the ground. Why was this happening to her? Why did her father murder his wife and son? Where was she? What was even happening? She heard the click of a lock and the door to the left of her opened. She heard a male voice and a girl's voice as they came in. The man was dragging a girl around her age roughly by the arm into the room. She was struggling and kicking him, but he paid it no mind. He threw her on the ground and clapped his hands. "Finally, stay where you belong, Brett," he said with a smirk on his face. He then left the room and closed the door behind him. A click signified that they were locked in, and Mizuko turned to the new girl who was now sitting up. The girl looked to be around her age, but a little shorter. She had gray hair pulled up in a twin drill style, and seemed to be distant. Her gray eyes were staring out into the distance, but were bloodshot, red, and puffy, as if she had been crying. Her clothes were torn, but they seemed to be a lot fancier than what Mizuko had ever seen before. The girl was silent for what seemed like ages. Mizuko was about to start a conversation, but before she could, the girl suddenly pounded the ground in anger. "Gosh darn those people! They hadn't showed up and my life would have been just fine! And my dad would still be alive!" she yelled. The girl started cursing and crying. Mizuko stared. She had lost someone too. Mizuko went over as close as she could to the girl. "Hey," Mizuko said quietly. The girl turned to Mizuko and sniffed. "And who are you?" the girl said, trying to wipe the tears from her face. "My name is Mizuko. I was brought here too. My family was murdered and I was brought here for some reason. So I know how you feel," she said, looking down sadly. She started to cry. The girl's face became less defensive, and she seemed to calm down a bit. "I see. So who'd he kill in your family?" said the girl with a sad look on her face. And Mizuko hesitated to spit out the words, but took a deep breath. "My mother, and my little brother," Mizuko said sadly. The girl nodded. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said. Mizuko shook her head. "It's okay. He killed your dad, too, didn't he?" she asked. Mizuko looked down sadly. "Yes, those jerks." But she didn't say jerk, she said, and pounded the ground again. Mizuko nodded and backed up a little. "So, how old are you?" the girl asked her. "I'm 9 years old. How about you?" Mizuko asked her in return. "I'm 9 too," the girl said. This made Mizuko smile a little. "You know, you're pretty cool, Mizuko. My name's Kazune," the girl said. "Kazune? That's a pretty name," Mizuko exclaimed. "Thanks. Yours is too," Kazune said, smiling. The two started to chat for a while, almost as if nothing bad had ever happened. After about 30 minutes, the door clicked again and the male voice from before was heard again. This time he was carrying a smaller girl who was curled up in a ball. He gently set her down as if not wanting her to cry and then left the room again, locking the door behind him. The new girl was small and looked a lot frailer. She had half white and half black hair, almost perfectly parted down the middle. She looked very sickly, malnourished, almost as if she'd been living on the street all her life. She noticed Kazune and Mizuko and then backed up a little. Mizuko didn't know what to do, but still wanted to comfort the girl somehow. She looked at Kazune for help, but all Kazune gave her was a shrug and a confused look. Mizuko sighed and decided to try something else. She gave the new girl a little wave. The new girl noticed that Mizuko was being friendly and waved back. Kazune noticed that she had reciprocated the wave and decided to try to wave herself. The girl waved to Kazune as well. "What's your name?" Mizuko asked. She shrunk back a little, but tried to speak. My name is Furuko, the girl said quietly. Furuko, huh? Kazune said for clarification. Furuko nodded. I know. It's a stupid name, right? She said, looking down sadly. Kazune and Mizuko looked at each other in surprise. Are you kidding me? That's a beautiful name, Mizuko replied excitedly. Furuko looked up in surprise. Heck yeah, that's an awesome name, Kazune said, agreeing with Mizuko. Furuko's cheeks turned a little red and she covered her eyes with her hands. She gave a little squeak of embarrassment. Mizuko and Kazune both looked at each other and seemed to say the same thing. We must protect her. After a few minutes, they seemed to coax her out of her shell a bit, and Mizuko brought up a question. I have to ask, but who's your favorite pro hero? Oh, sorry, I didn't even think about the fact that you may not like pros, Mizuko said frantically, trying to cover herself. Haha, no, I love heroes. But my favorite pro has to be Edgeshot. He's so cool. He's like a super ninja, and his quirk is amazing, Kazune said excitedly. I agree. Headshot is awesome, Mizuko said. What about you, Furuko? Kazune asked her. My favorite pro is Best Genius, Furuko said shyly. Ooh! Mizuko said excitedly. Intriguing! Tell us more, Kazune said. Well, he's really experienced in fashion. And, well, he's really strong and brave and really cool, Furuko said quietly. His quirk is super strong and it really does well in capture missions, Mizuko replied. Kazune and Furuko looked at her in surprise. Wow, didn't realize you were such a hero nerd, Kazune said intrigued. Mizuko looked down embarrassed. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, she started to say. Whoa, chill out, girl, I'm saying it's cool. I never met anyone like that, Kazune said, reassuring her. Furuko nodded in agreement. Mizuko took a deep breath of relief. Well, since we mentioned our favorites, who's your favorite, Mizuko? Well, my favorite pro is All Might. Not only is he the #1 pro, but he's also the symbol of peace. I've watched all of his previous fights that were recorded from his debut and onward. He's really amazing and... Mizuko covered her mouth to stop herself from ranting. Kazune laughed. You aren't just a hero nerd, you're an All Might fangirl, she said. Mizuko felt her cheeks turn red from embarrassment. I think it's really cool, Mizuko, Furuko said shyly. Mizuko smiled. Thanks, you guys, she said nervously. Suddenly, the door opened again, and 2 people walked through the door. The man that brought both Kazune and Furuko was the first to come into the room. He had very stern-looking and almost seemed to have no emotion on his face. The second was the man himself, the man who murdered their families, her father. He stepped forward and spoke to the man next to him. Unchain her, he said, nodding in Mizuko's direction. Yes, Dr. Mihasho, the man said quickly. He quickly went over to Mizuko and used a key to unlock her restraints. Feeling freedom in her wrists again, she quickly stood up and stood next to the other two girls. Gyro smiled at them all. "Come with me, girls," he said smoothly, his eyes glowing the bright lavender color again. All three of the girls involuntarily nodded and followed him out of the room. Why are we being forced to follow? What does he want us for? Mizuko thought to herself. He brought them out to a larger room with even more machines. But besides the machines, there was something that made all three of them break out of their trance. Standing in front of them was a sea of children. It seemed to fill the whole room, and they all looked scared, angry, or motionless. Gyro turned to the girls. "These will be your new friends. Get used to them, girls, because whether you like it or not, you'll be stuck with them for the rest of your lives," he said with an evil smirk on his face. Mizuko's eyes were wide open in shock as she wondered to herself, what in the world is going to happen to us?